Alright guys, so with these cars, these Maximas, we don't have many options for suspension. All we have is coilovers and then some tdmi flipped tie rod ends, and that's really all we have in terms of suspension modification. But I really was looking how to do roll center correction with these cars because they don't make anything. They make them for a lot of other cars, but not really for the Maximas. So I was doing my research and I figured out that S14 ball joints have the same mounting diameter in the control arm, and they do have a different part number, but they have the same taper as well, so they do fit inside of the knuckles and control arms. So what I did was I got these gktech extended lower ball joints. They're extended by 20 millimeters, so they are a bit taller. What this does is essentially move the control arm angle down to actually correct the roll center of the control arm. Here it is. See how long that is? Pretty long little ball joint right here. And as you see the taper of these, I have some stock 5.5 knuckles right here. Actually, they aren't stock, but these are 5.5 knuckles. And if I go ahead and slide this in here, you see it mounts the same up there and down there. So this is going to be going on today. I'm going to put them in the control arms. I really hope they fit. They should, because of the same mounting. And Nissan, to be honest, is a cheaper company, so they're not really going to produce vastly different parts for each car. And then in terms of tie rod ends, you could easily get away with using the tdmi ones, but I've heard bad experiences with them. Even though it was a long time ago and I don't think they're really a bad product, I just didn't want to take my chances because they do use it. The way they work is they go through, so it's a thinner mounting point. So I actually bought these SPL tie rod ends for S13s because they use the exact same tie rod end. And here they are. They use a pretty thick hardened steel shaft and then a heim joint for the actual tie rod end. So these are pretty sweet, but I actually cannot use them, or I couldn't use them, because the way the tie rod ends mount on an S13 and 14, they're flipped. So these are the mounting points for the tie rod ends, and on a stock 5.5 gen, they're flipped the other way. So if I were to try mounting this piece, it would be facing up, which would not correct the bump steer at all. So what I did is I had a guy cut these, flip them, and re-weld them. So these are actually modified knuckles, but you could definitely just do this and use the tdmi ones if you aren't worried about it. And I actually can't use these right now because they're a bit longer, because they're basically drift parts. But I'm going to go ahead and use these stock tie rod ends, and even though they're flipped, the flipping should actually correct it a decent amount. And then I will still look into getting different inner tie rods to actually run those, because those are a really nice piece. I also have some bushings I'm going to install in the control arm since they're already going to be out of the car. And then I don't know if I'm going to include this in the video, but I'm definitely going to do it and I'm going to record it. So we'll kind of see how the day goes. But yeah, that's the plan right now, is to fix roll center on the Maxima. And just a quick explanation of what the roll center is, especially on a McPherson strut vehicle. I'll go ahead and get under the car and kind of show you, explain this in the best way possible. That right there is our control arm, and as you see, it's angled down. So the roll center point is the point where both control arms kind of intersect in their angles. So when they're angled down like this, they basically go towards the bottom of the car. And what this does is it introduces more body roll to the vehicle. Basically, the closer you have your roll center to your center of gravity, the less body roll you're going to have. So by moving these down, it'll essentially bring our roll center about flat with the ground, which is ideal, and it's going to be a lot better. And then, especially with the McPherson car, the way that these work, they have one strut mounting at the top and then the control arm. So the control arm moves on its own axis. So essentially when you turn and the car rolls in a corner, it will pull in based on the arc of the control arm. So it'll actually give you more positive camber, which will make you lose grip. So by moving these down and basically flattening them out, I'm hoping that when I take a turn now, it'll sort of body roll in more, but then it'll camber in because of the way it'll pull the control arm in its own arc swing. Also did new wheel bearings in these. Just because I had them out of the car, I repainted them, just a nice black so that they look nice. Did wheel bearings in them. I did fresh SKF wheel bearings. They are very nice, and obviously will spin perfectly. While they're out of the car, I thought I might as well just do the maintenance on them and do the wheel bearings, because it's a pretty big deal to have good wheel bearings, especially in a front-wheel drive car. So, yeah. Alright guys, I just checked the toe so that way when I replace the knuckles I can make sure it's still accurate. And since I have to press some ball joints, I don't know where to start. I think I'm going to start with, actually no, since I take the knuckle out anyways, I'm going to start by taking off the knuckle, taking off everything that's part of this, and then I will move on to getting the lower control arm out, and then I'll end up pressing the bushings into it, and I will put the ball joint into it as well. When you do the tie rod ends and the ball joints, you want to hit the knuckle right here. It'll actually break it loose, it'll pop out. I'll try and actually just show you, because it might be pretty easy. Actually, I'm going to put the nut on it. That way you don't hit the threads. And then just give it a couple pounds. Just like that. Now you can take this nut fully off. And watch. That's all it takes. Just like that. You can let this go ahead and chill to the side. I know mine are bad, but again, I'm going to replace them eventually, so not too worried about it right now. Alright, so here's where I'm at right now. Tie rod end obviously out, ABS sensor disconnected from the knuckle, axle out, control arm out. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the sway bar end link. I'm probably going to drop the control arm. That way I can get the bushings pressed in and the new ball joint pressed in. But right now the knuckle's out, and it's going pretty good so far. Alright, so this big nut in here is going to be a 27 mil, but it looks like it's going to be difficult to get to. So I'm just going to drop all of the mounting for the control arm under the car. So basically, we have 2 bolts right here. You can kind of see them, one here, and then 4 right here all on the line. They're all 22 mils, so just get those off. They're probably going to be pretty tight. I don't know, I haven't taken one off yet. My impact should make easy work of it. But yeah, so take that off and then I'll get back. And they were tight. I don't know if these are different lengths, so I'm going to go ahead and put them in a line so that I know which ones came first. I would assume these 4 are all the same size, but those 2 are obviously going to be different, but these 2 should actually match each other as well. Alright, so control arm is going to be very annoying. I got that part off, by the way, just degreasing it. Here's the control arm. I already took this bushing off, but it's held on with metal and it's super hard to get off, and it's liquid filled, so be ready for that. I had to drill it out, obviously broke it off, and then I got super lucky because I have a front wheel drive bearing press set I got from Harbor Freight. It's done wonders so far. I highly recommend you get one, especially if you work on your own car. It'll always be useful. And I can actually use this to press out the race of the bushing, which is going to be super nice. I thought I'd have to cut it out with like a hacksaw and hammer it, but I really don't, which is sick. So I'm going to go ahead and get this race pressed out, and then this piece is pretty much prepped. So here's the rear polyurethane bushing. It has a face, so this sort of raised edge faces the front of the car, and this also fits in a certain way. This side mounts lower and this side mounts higher. Just make sure you find the orientation of it before you press this in the wrong way. I just scratched in an arrow right there so I know. And I'm just going to use the vise to press this in. Look how easy this is. Love that. If you don't have a vise, you can probably just use a hammer and it'll go in pretty easily. But obviously I have the tool, so I'm going to use it. And I'll just go ahead and seat it all the way around, but it's basically done, which is sweet. Alright, so it's probably been like an hour, and I have the other control arm fully finished, prepped. I have the Energy polyurethane bushings in here. I have the S14 ball joint. As you see, I didn't really go over it too much, but it fits in there perfectly. It's the same size where it mounts, and the C-clip actually fits on it. So I'm pretty sure this is actually going to fit pretty well. I'm going to go and put this back in the car right now. Then I'll end up getting the other knuckles, putting them on here, and then I will get back to you guys after this is in the car. Alright, so actually going pretty good right now. I have the bottom lower control arm in. Just put the bolts in, put some Loctite on them. I'm going to torque them in a bit. The ball joint, like I said, it fits in here, which is perfect. And then this top portion I actually had to trim down. I had to cut it with my Dremel. Sorry, that's out of focus. I don't know if I could really fix it. I had to Dremel this down so it would actually clear this axle, because it would hit right here. I have 6th gen axles though. If you have the stock ones, you might not need to clearance them, but I did, so just letting you guys know that. Again though, it wasn't very hard. It was able to trim pretty easily, and this now fits, so I'm going to go ahead and torque this down. Let me get the torque spec, because I have the book right here to show it all. Wow, this actually skipped a lot in the wind. Here it should be rear suspension, Front suspension, ball joint to steering knuckle in 2003 is going to be 73 to 87 foot-pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and do it to 80, and then I'm just going to put the knuckle back together like normal, like before when it was stock. Alright, so I haven't been filming much because I've just been trying to put it together, but I figured out everything you got to do and all like the little hiccups and things. That way this will work out pretty good. So, on these bushings over here, sorry it's so bright, on these bushings, this one is a normal rubber bushing. This one right here is actually liquid filled, so be ready for it to kind of shoot liquid everywhere whenever you start to cut it and drill into it. That bottom one, just drill into normally with a normal drill bit. It'll go in just fine. You just gotta wiggle it around. I mean, I'm sure you'd understand how to do it, but I guess I'll kind of show you. But I'm gonna start drilling into that one, and then just be somewhere where you can kind of be messy because it gets disgusting. To get the race off of this one, you gotta cut a strip down the middle so you can actually crack it in half and then pull it off. Here it is right here. This is the old center from that bushing. And then again, you just use a wheel bearing press to get that out. And then the polyurethane goes right in. You can honestly do it by hand. It's super duper easy. Here's the new ball joint and the old ball joint. As you see, it's way longer, so this basically just moves the control arm down to fix the angle of it. This, just use a ball joint press, put these out there. You just replace them like normal ball joints, and then you're basically all set to go. Like I said, they fit, they're the perfect size. Pretty sure this goes in like this. And right there, you see they fit in, they press in perfectly, they clip in perfectly, they fit just like the stock ones. Alright, so for some reason on the other side, the control arm doesn't hit right here, but on this side it hits the brake rotor, so I'm going to just cut the end of this off. I'm pretty sure that's the same, they are in the same way. I don't know why it'd be different, but it's whatever. I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this down. And also the knuckle on this side, the axle didn't really hit it as much, but this is good now. I trimmed the inside so it wouldn't hit it, and we're chilling. But yeah, cut this down. Alright, so basically I just finished everything, put it all together. As you see, my toe is now pretty bad, so I'm going to use the toe plates and try and get it angled right. Both wheels are faced in, and this is with the wheel straightened. So I'm going to try to get this like pretty decent and then align it to where it was before, and job's done after that. Alright guys, so I've had the roll center correction kit on my car for about a week now. It's been feeling awesome, but the car is still a little bit bump steery just because of the angle of my tie rods, because when I did flip them, they're flipped and they have a pretty steady angle, but they're not exactly parallel to the control arm. That is where these things come into play. As you saw already, these are an SPL bump steer correction tie rod end for an S14, S13, just for basic 240s. And they are a bit longer, they're about a ½ inch longer than the stock Maxima tie rod ends. And the reason I didn't just go with the TDMI is because these are honestly cheaper to get, and they're a way better part. They're American made, they're super quality, they have nice customer support, and you can honestly buy these pieces if anything were to break on you over time. So instead of just going with the TDMI ones, I decided to stick with these and actually get a shorter inner. So on the Maxima, our inner tie rods are 12.91 inches long. It's actually really common for drifters to use them in their 240s whenever they extend the lower control arms, because their stock ones aren't long enough. But there's a whole write-up on one of the S-Chassis forums called Zilvia.net, and it talks about all the different like Nissan inner tie rod sizes, because I'm pretty sure all Nissans use the same rack thread for this part, and then every car that isn't an S13 and up has an M14 thread. So the S13 inner tie rods are a little thinner, they're a 12 millimeter, these are 14 millimeters. So these are actually 12 inches long, so they're about a whole inch shorter than the stock ones. They're about 12 inches, as you can see, where the Maxima ones are around 13. So this is going to allow me to use these outers because they're a bit longer, and the thread actually goes in all the way, and these have super good engagement. So today I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to try and get a boot for these as well right now, because I don't have a boot, and I couldn't find replacement power steering boots for the Maxima anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and try and find some universal ones that'll fit, and I'll get back to you. Alright, so I just went to the junkyard and I picked up some power steering rack boots because mine are bad and I couldn't find anywhere that actually sold any, so I just went to the junkyard, took some off another Maxima. These are going to be going on today, and then along with the inner tie rods I got, I'm probably just going to use an adjustable wrench to take them off. Hopefully I can actually fit it in there, but I know I can get it on the end of this. I just hope it'll fit on. The newly replaced ball joint, please apply the attached grease with the following. Alright, well, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and install these right now. Alright, so I know this video isn't really about how to change tie rod inners and ends, but I'm just gonna go over it. Take off the cotter pin right here, this is gonna be a 19, just loosen it, and you can hammer the side of this to pop out the outer tie rod. There's our bolt, and then like I said, see, this is gonna be pretty annoying to get out, so what you do is just take a hammer and then wow. There you go. There's the tie rod right here. Alright, I kind of messed up the order. I suggest you leave the tie rod in there just until you loosen this nut up. That way you can actually get it off. Because once it's off there, this is going to just spin inside of the steering rack. Alright, so here we have the inner boot. What I did for these, these are basically like a metal zip tie. And they're going to be really annoying. And they're actually not going to be reusable, I don't think. Maybe there's a way they are reusable, but I do not know of one. So don't quote me on any of that. I basically just bent this with pliers so I can get it kind of off the boot. And then I literally just pulled the boot off. What's great for me is my power steering rack seems really healthy actually. There's no fluid in here at all, which is sweet. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the wheel left as far as it can go, just so that this hopefully sticks out far enough so I can actually take off that outer or the inner tie rod. So I'm going to go ahead and get back to you guys when I find out if I can actually do that. Alright, so I finally ended up getting the inner tie rod out from the Maxima. What I did was I put a wrench on the power steering rack. It's going to be a 21 mil, and then I just used vice grips. Some pretty big vice grips, these guys right here, and I just clamped the end of this really hard and just pushed it, and it managed to actually break open, which was pretty sweet. As you see here, they are. They're actually not in bad shape, but I'm doing it for the length. As you see here, this is end to end. They are just about an inch short on the Q45 rods. These line up, these are the same length and the same thread pitch. Matter of fact, I'll just show you that they're the same right now. We'll try threading it into here. I don't know if I can line up with one hand. Ooh, I might have got it right there. Yeah, as you see right there, it's threading in with no problems. They're the same thread pitch, so everything's fine right there. And they're just a bit shorter, so I'm going to go ahead and get to installing the rest of it. So I got the inner tie rod in, and I have it tightened down. I had to grease it up. I got Moog inner tie rods, so they actually come with grease to put it on. I just made sure it was in and kind of worked it around to make sure it was like in every crevice of the tie rod. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this nut off, and then I'm going to put the boot back on, but I don't have the metal one to replace it. So I'm going to use a plastic zip tie, just a normal zip tie, and tighten it pretty tight. And then I'm going to use the original clamp I actually took off of the stock one right here to put it back together with the outer or the inner tie rod. Alright, so I got the inner boot on, and I basically held it inside with zip ties and then put the stock clip on this. It's set now. I'm going to go ahead and install the tie rod ends. These are going to be different for me than most people. If you have stock ones, then you just install them, but for me, I have a specific procedure because I got the SPL ones for the S13, so I'm going to go ahead and do it right now. Shouldn't be too difficult. Alright, so I just got the tie rod ends on. I'm going to get them relatively straight, that way they're just ready to align, or at least close to it after I do the other side. But I'm going to leave it for right now. This is basically like installed. As you see, everything's tightened, everything's to the factory specification, and I'm probably going to like mark these with a paint marker because they don't have a cotter pin and I don't want them to move. So I'm going to mark them and then basically move to the other side and then start on that. Alright, I got this whole side fully like reassembled. I actually had to disconnect the lower control arm so I can get a better angle on the inner tie rod on the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and hook all that stuff back up. But this, as you see, this just allows you to get a better angle. It allows you to get more optimal with the way that your control arm and tie rod align. That way you don't get any bump steer. And with the shorter tie rods, with this combo, basically stock Maximas don't let you do any toe out, and I'm not going to do toe out, but still, like, that's adjustability you can't really like gain if you don't have it. So I'm basically gonna leave it loose right now, and then I have it pretty eyeballed straight-ish when it's off the ground, but you need to align it when it's on the ground. So when I drop it down, I'm gonna actually align it, and then everything should be pretty set with this car. Alright, so I realized there's a lot of stuff I didn't go over earlier in the video. I just want to go ahead and kind of re-explain everything that I had to do to actually get all this stuff to work properly. Basically what I did was different than what a lot of you guys will probably do. I actually had to modify my stock knuckles to flip the tie rod end inside of the knuckle. What you could also do is just literally run the tdmi tie rod ends and just do the same S14 ball joint that I did. like I did say, I had to run Q45 in our tie rods. If I had to do this again, I'd run the PSM spherical shorter ones. I believe they're 11.5 inches long, or the same size as an S14, because these, even being 12 inches and being an inch shorter with these same outers, they were a little bit short, or a little bit too long, actually. I'm kind of maxed out on toe, and I'm still just at 0 degrees of toe, so I'd do it again with a shorter one. That way I can actually get adjustment in and out. As for the ball joints on the bottom and the control arm, talk about those again. These fit with no issues inside the ball joint, or inside of the control arm and the knuckle. The only thing I had to do was trim the lower control arm right here from hitting the brake rotor. It was getting super close before when turning and hitting suspension or hitting bumps. Now it's good. You just have to trim it down a decent amount. That's kind of a thing you have to do at your own accord and just look at. I had to run 2 different washers up here so I could actually tighten down properly. At first I was having issues because it would keep on coming loose and then it wouldn't stay tight, so my alignment would get messed up while driving. Obviously not a good thing. So I put a new nut on there, I put 2 washers on there, made sure it was tight, and then I paint markered it to make sure it couldn't come loose again. That hasn't given me any issues so far. I've had the ball joints on, I've had everything on here for like a month now, and it's honestly been super, super nice and super solid. I have no regrets with any of the things I did. Everything's working out flawless, so I definitely recommend doing this if you are actually trying to handle good with one of these cars. I'm surprised no one else has done this yet. Maybe they have, I haven't posted about it, but no one else knew about it, so I'm glad I can kind of find something out for us Maxima guys to do with our cars if we want roll center correction. But yeah, that's all you need for this stuff. I'll go ahead and put all the part numbers in the description. I don't know if this will be at the beginning or the end of the video, but it's not a super hard thing to do. It just takes a bit of research, and it was harder for me learning how to do it all, and honestly would recommend doing it. Like I said, helps out a ton, feels super good, and is just beneficial for the car.